Welcome, my friends, to this episode of the Whole Health with Rob Carney Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. And all my guests are special, but this is a guy that I've heard talked about a lot. You know, we do this thing called Ice and Iron in the Boston area. And we got a few people, one of them, shout out to my buddy Ryan Sprague, a few other people that talk about this dude, Mark England. I've heard his name for a couple of years. And to be honest, I was getting a little sick of hearing this guy's name because he just kept popping up all the time. I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but everybody keeps talking about him. And then we started meeting more and more people from this community. We did a great retreat last year with Ryan, with Alex, Chopper Dave, a lot of these guys that have been on my show. And they were talking about this thing called Enlifted. And I noticed they had some little phrases, like they kept saying this thing called negation acknowledged. And I was like, what are these guys doing? You know, they just say these little phrases and they kept hearing them. And then one day, I was like, all right, guys, I got to figure out what the hell are you all talking about? And they started telling me about this wonderful program, the Enlifted Method. I met Mark for the first time in person a few months ago. He put me through this great program called Vocabulary, and I really learned a lot. It made me very aware of some of the challenges that I was having with my own language. And it made me very aware of the relationships, the words I use in my relationships, both personal and professional, with my partner, with my friends, family members, business partners, etc. So, Mr. Mark England is a TEDx speaker and co-founder and head coach of Enlifted. He's been researching, coaching, and presenting on the power of language and identity for the past 15 years. Mark was an elementary school P.E. teacher before getting into personal development and has a master's degree in education. So, Mr. Mark England, welcome, my friend.
Rob, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me on the show, man. It was very nice meeting you, and a good chunk of the Ice and Iron crew up in Boston a couple of months ago.
Yeah, man, and this is something, you know, as soon as I met you in person, I was like, now I get why they talk about this guy all the time. Mark led us through a nice little workshop after our Ice and Iron event, and I remember getting messages from people days after, be like, oh my God, that workshop with Mark was awesome, you know, all these great shifts. And like I was saying, this vocabulary course for me, I knew there were areas I could improve my language, but simply having a label to them made so many things click. It was like, boom, oh, that's a negation. Oh, that's soft talk. Oh, I couldn't put a label to things. And simply having categories made all these things put together. So I want to start by, how did you get into this language game? Because I think that's where, you know, a lot of things usually don't stem from the best circumstance. I think a lot of people get into these things because of a challenge. So I want to let you dive into the what got you to where you are right now.
A dark year of the soul, Rob. So I thought I was a tough guy in high school and college. I wrestled in high school, got into jiu-jitsu my first year of college, trained, got into Thai boxing, started competing in MMA fights and kickboxing fights. And I was doing decent enough on the regional scene back in the day, which was nothing. It was even before it was called MMA. It was called no rules fighting or cage fighting, or even valet tudo for people that were in the scene. And it was very fringe and even looked down upon, but the people that were in it loved it. And I got an opportunity to go over to Thailand right after I graduated college. And the plan was to go over there for a year, teach English, polish up my Thai boxing skills, come back and go pro, because that's all I wanted to do. I've fallen in love twice. Once with the first practice I went to with jiu-jitsu, and I got choked out for the first time. Very different than pinning someone. I pin you, you pin me. That's cool, but getting choked, I was like, oh my God, what is this? Fell in love. The second time was when I went to an emotional detoxification workshop in 2003. Now, backing up a little bit, I moved to Thailand in 2002, jacked my knee up for a second time, had my second knee surgery over there, was in a lot of pain. And when my heart sank, bro. When that doctor said your career as a fighter is over, you could become a very good swimmer. And I'm thinking laps next to grandpa at the pool. Let me tell you, that sounded real fun. Anyway, darkness descended. And I didn't laugh for an entire year. I might not have smiled authentically for an entire year because I had such an entrenched victim mentality about what happened. And I already had one. This just inflamed it times 9. I used this because it was a big deal, man. Nobody at the time was traveling to Thailand and going to live over there. And I had multiple going away parties, and everybody knew I was a fighter. I loved the attention. And so when I went over there and fucked the whole thing up, I hope we can drop F-bombs on here. Okay, great. Went over there and I used that fail as the final damning piece of evidence that there was something wrong with me. And I was somehow doomed to fail, and I wasn't good enough. It was never going to work. Why'd you even try, dummy? And that story was so loud and took up so much mental real estate. I stopped enjoying life. I mean, there was no part of I found no brightness, no joy anywhere in my life. And eventually I got sick of that. Right around the same time I got sick of that, my vice principal, because we went over there, and long story short, we got much better jobs. I was an elementary school sports teacher at an international school for 5 years. I lived in Thailand for a decade. That still sounds strange to say, but I was over there for a decade. 5 years in Bangkok, 5 years in Samui. Anyway, right around the same time that I'm over me, my vice principal had come back from a cleansing resort down on this island, Koh Samui. And he said, hey man, they're doing some really interesting stuff down there. And there's a yoga scene, and people are doing these detoxes, these cleanses, and everybody's in the sauna in the evening. And there's a bunch of really interesting, I think you might like it. I was like, you know what? I'm open to that. Because I'd had some acupuncture in college, and I was open enough to go. And I did one of these 7-day cleanses where you pay to not eat. It's a great gig for them. And I came back feeling just a little bit better, Rob. And I was like, you know what? I'm going back. Third time down is when I saw that workshop on emotional detoxification. And this gentleman, he ended up becoming one of my first mentors. No, not one of the first mentor I had in this work. And guess what he talked about? Words, stories, identities, emotional responses, stress responses. And then he asked the group, hey, is there anybody out there who's stuck on a story? And this woman shot her hand up, and it really was a stinger of a breakup. So her and her friends rented a house down at the beach. Her boyfriend and his friends rented a house next to it. Add alcohol, press play. You can see where this goes. He hooked up with one of her best friends in front of everybody one night, and then dumped her in front of everybody the next night. Let's all say ouch on 3, everybody. Yeah. And she told the story. She told the story 3 times. She told the story the first time through, he just let her go, and she was crying and angry. Second time through, she told the same story, but he made a couple adjustments. Andy made a couple adjustments in the language, and it loosened it up a little bit. You could see it. You could hear it. And now she was sad, no tears. The third time through, because they had gone through some of the emotional layering of this story, he was able to identify the Lord of the Rings sentence, the linchpin sentence, the thing that bound everything else together, which was, he did that to me. And he had her repeat it a couple of times, so everybody in the workshop was staring at the same sentence. And that brings up an interesting side point. We use our language so quickly, and it's an educational issue. It has nothing to do with intelligence. With such little awareness of what words we're using, that it's very hard to get clear on what sentences are the ones that are keeping us the most stuck. In context of this story and this woman, it was, he did that to me. And then he said, that last word, me, He said, take that out and put in himself. And it was such a radical departure from the story she'd been telling herself. He did that to me, forces her to take it personally. He did that to me, creates the victim villain mental imagery in her imagination. Hello, stress response. Hello, breath trapped in the chest. Hello, more of the same, as long as that story stays told in that same way. And then it started to dawn on her. She said it clunky and with uptalk, where it goes up as a question. He did that to me, and then you see her talk herself into it. Excuse me. He did that to himself. He did. He did do that to himself. And then she starts looking around, and then another part of the story comes out. Yeah, I mean, he lost a lot of friends. He looked like a real asshole, and you know what? That was never going to work out anyway, because he was pretty weird. And I saw that, and I said, that's not my story, but that's my story, because I was blaming other people for training too hard. And, he should have let this, like, I had villains in my story that were keeping me as the victim. I was keeping me as a victim with these people in this story, and very much blocking me from taking responsibility for me practicing, going to practice when I should have had rest days, and being a show off in the gym, and like all the stuff that I did, which was everything, to contribute to the scenario. I had this victim villain story that it absolved me from responsibility and made me right. Right about the wrong things, if that makes sense. So, and then a little more story, just to give you some perspective on where I was. After that, he paired us up with someone to share stories with. Okay, here, you work a story with her. You're the practitioner, then you switch, and so I got paired up with this woman, and she went first and told me a story about something. I did my best, and then he goes, okay, everybody switch. And I looked at her and said, I'm sorry, I'm leaving. It's like, I was so close, dude. I'm not starting this. I'm not going into this, negations everywhere. There's no way I'm sharing this with anyone. And I did take action. I got up and I left the workshop, and I went to an internet cafe at the time and downloaded the 81-page manual on how to do this work on yourself, and went back to my bungalow and began that night. And I started getting some stories out that I had no idea were still influencing me from way back in my childhood and stuff. And like some of the stories of why I was fighting in the first place, to prove that I wasn't scared, because I was scared, because I ran away from some fights in elementary school on the playground and blamed myself ever since, secretly. And so I was fighting with this chip on my shoulder. I was fighting with a lot of anger and resentment, hence bad breathing mechanics. So, you go do any high level exertion, workouts for prolonged period of time with bad breathing mechanics, and things are going to break. I can keep going. Like, it's
Well, so that was 2 decades ago. And
yeah.
Obviously a lot has changed since then. And, I think that the big thing there, like, is so common in so many people's stories, is, what Paul Chek says is the pain teacher. The pain teacher doesn't knock on the door. He breaks the door down and says, hey, buddy, it's time to change, because we can't keep going on like this. And so many of us have this victimhood mentality entrenched in our system, because a lot of it's programmed, by design of the, systems that be, the powers that be, is to create a system of victims. And that's okay. We can recognize that. Again, we don't want to blame anybody. This is the way it is. We use the situation how it is. Because when I'm honest with myself, there's a lot of victimhood mentality that has I'm still pulling out some roots. I still find some areas like, oh, there's still some roots in that victimhood mentality in that area. And it's constantly ripping out these roots, planting new seeds that are more of a victor, more of a, controller, more of a architect is the word that you use. And so that's something I want to start with. What are the 2 language types that you utilize, and what are the 3 language components?
Great question. So I'll back into that with the definition of the victim mentality. So I'm going to take a little bit out of the middle. And this is the verbatim definition of the victim mentality. Most people have never heard this. Okay. It's a very valuable thing to have heard and contemplate. That means you revisit it, you think about it numerous times. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That second sentence is right between the eyes and right where it belongs. The victim mentality depends, as in it has to have, a habitual thought process. Habitual accurately implies duration and addiction. So if there's a habitual thought process that the victim mentality has to have, what are the habitual thoughts? I mean, rocket science, folks. What are the habitual thoughts? There are three, and we reshot the course that you took, because before conflict language was called conflict language, it was called victim mentality language. Accurate as it may be, too strong of a place to start the conversation for most people. Okay. So there are, and this is coming from, I turned 15 years old as a coach this past January. This is coming from 15 years in the game, staring at people's words and stories and how they influence them for better and for worse. The language patterns that the victim mentality, habitual thoughts, language, the victim mentality has to have, 85% of it comes down to three pillars. We have negations, we have projections, we have soft talk. And soft talk is the easiest place to start. We can do a soft talk challenge at the end, super quick, super valuable. So negations force you to stare at the worst case scenario. The first thing my driving teacher said when I got in the car is, look where you want to go, because you're probably going to go there. So words like can't, I can't keep focusing on my past. What did I just force myself to stare at? My past. And the good parts? No, the parts that I still have regrets about, or that are still haunting me. There they are again. Rob, I don't want to argue with you so much. I just made a picture of us arguing, and oh, by the way, you did too. Great way to start off a conscious conversation. You know, I'm not going to spend all my money again this month. There's a picture of me spending all my money. I won't let them treat me like that. Oh, that's nice. That's a projection and a negation. Got a won't and them in there. So I won't let them do that to me, treat me like that. I get a picture of what I don't want, and them doing that same thing, which, we'll get to projections in a second. Can't, won't, isn't, not, hasn't, haven't, shouldn't. Okay. If you all are listening to this, you all are listening to this podcast. If you're not driving and you like to take notes, take notes. Here's some interesting metrics. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, and 80% of what we teach. Okay. So if you write this stuff down, you're getting an extra 20% for your investment listening to this. Okay. And then there's projections. Projections, that's where the bitterness comes in. That's where the venom is. That's almost exclusively, this is where people are more emotionally attached to their story. Out of the three pillars of conflict language, this one carries the most sting and also the most opportunity. So statements like, he did that to me. He's in the picture. I'm in the picture, or in the sentence, and then that's going to force that victim villain mental imagery. He's in the picture. I'm in the picture. He's doing something to me. I've got to wait for him to change his behavior so I can feel good about myself. Hurry up. Yeah. They don't respect my time. She never lets me think for myself. I need you to listen to me. Oh, really? We'll take out the you, put in me. I need me to listen to me. Oh, that's a little bit of a different, got a little bit of more of a different flavor to it. This woman walks in and sits down. She had a story, and the linchpin sentence was a projection similar to the one I shared earlier from that emotional detox workshop. And her sentence, and she had been divorced for 5 years, was, he made me think we needed to get married. Look at that, folks. I mean, this has nothing to do with intelligence. I need you to respect me. If Mark England believes that, or Einstein believes that, we're getting the same outcome, which is the victim villain, the stress response, the breath trapped in the chest, the tight shoulders, I'm pissed. And guess what? It usually stops right there. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't. It usually just keeps going on and on and on, a thought train. He made me think we needed to get married. I had to write that sentence down. Things get very real when you write things down. And I said, who made you think you all needed to get married? Well, he did. How did he do it? He was just very persistent. Okay. Who thinks your thoughts, him or you? And she saw where this was going. She took a breath, a sigh of relief, of pressure. And I said, scratch out the him and put in I, for me. And she stared at it for a second. Part of her was ready. Part of her was still had her heels dug in, and she went with it. More breathing, getting ourselves out of these stress responses. Most people's breathing is trapped in the chest, folks, because their language is working against them, and they're unaware. This is an education issue. I'm saying it again. Because sometimes it takes us a little while to get our heads around. I made me think we needed to get married. Yes, I did. And then there's the exit. Okay, then there's you can create a new story a lot easier from there. So the projection keywords, you, he, she, they, people's first names. Let's throw mom and dad in there. Mom talks to me like a child. Take out mom, put in I. Oi, oi, I talk to me like, literally, folks, who talks more shit to us about us than us? It's not even in the same, there's no conversation. It's not the same universe. I mean, it's like us, me, and then there's not even a close second. This is, the hate speech is something that comes up a lot. We're in the self-hate speech business. Let's stop the self-hate speech. See what happens there. I mean, what happens more often? Hate speech or self-hate speech? That's not even a close contest either.
Yeah, and Mark, with this, so we got the negation, soft talk, and projections. And one thing that I love about these is that now I almost feel like I can take a step back when I hear things and not take them as personally as well. And it was also great. I was walking around the city with my buddy Ed, Matt, and Jordan the other day. First time I've been in the city in a long time. So we're walking around and I hear some guy walking with his girlfriend say, I just don't want to cause any problems. And so I look at Ed, I was like, we both have this look like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen when they get home. They're going to be causing some problems. And it's becoming so aware of that. It's like the don't want to, the causing, like all these little things like, oh, they're in for a tough evening together here. But it's like hearing these things. I remember another example was, I was telling my buddies like, oh, I got, Chipotle, a nice cheat meal, haven't had a cheat meal in a while. Like I said that then, he's like, one of my buddies like, oh, don't feel bad about that. And I was like, oh, well, I was feeling good about it. And now they're just throwing that negation in there. So it's funny, but I didn't take it personally because, I realized like, oh, this is creating a mental imagery of feeling bad about it, telling me not to be that. It's creating the opposite. So it's just like, I feel like it's almost put me where I can be more of an observer of these conversations now, not be so reactive. And I think that's a big thing. We live in this reactive age where there's no thought followed by response. It's just impulse response. So I think it really has allowed me to step back and look at all my conversations in a completely different light.
That's the name of the game. And you absolutely nailed it. It's belief and then reaction. one of the best things that I can do for myself is to observe my story more and believe my story less. I'm drinking fizzy waters, folks. Observe, listen to my words as opposed to believing my words. And like you said, also, when you're in conversations with people, observe what they're saying as opposed to believing what they're saying. It gives you some space. And when you learn just a little bit more, and you're getting a lot on this podcast, you learn a little bit more about how our language influences us for better and for worse, and what aspects of us our language influences. We're covering that as well. Then you've got a game to play. Then mindset becomes practical. You know what the one sentence on our website is? Practical mindset tools to unlock freedom and confidence. Practical. I'm going to go off on a mindset tangent, and then we'll come back to soft talk. It's almost exclusively the conversation about mindset, Rob, is held in this big picture, macro conversation, and it's something we know that's super important. How do we do it? There's that confident person over there looking all confident, and I'm over here, whoops, would have been nice. Okay. When we add in what words to use less of and why, and what words to use more of and why, and how to pick up our pen and write out the stories that have been bothering us for God knows how long, then mindset becomes practical. As in, what's the root word of practical? Practice. As in, I can practice using my language differently. And when I say language, I mean internal dialogue and external dialogue, thoughts, speech, and writing it. And this thing, folks, is it arguably is the easiest thing to overlook. Why? Because it's right between our ears, right under our nose, and right at our fingertips. It's so close to home, and people think that the solution to my problems, which are huge, are equally as huge. Not very frequently. It's as seemingly minor as making some simple adjustments in our everyday, ordinary language, which leads us to soft talk. So soft talk, out of the 3 pillars of conflict language, is the easiest place to start. It is known as the gateway drug for the rest of our language because it's super easy to pick up. Okay. The emotional charge around them most of the time is low, so it makes it easy to change the sentence, or just and how you do it, you just take it out. Okay. And it can get quite comical. It's out of the 3 pillars of conflict language, it's the most funny. So statements like, it's almost like I'm procrastinating, or I might be drinking too much coffee, or I guess I'm backed up on some emails, or I might be overeating at night, or I guess I should write down my goals. And what that does is only take out soft talk, folks, if you want to majorly increase your confidence and sound and feel much better. Okay. If you want to sound insecure and because it's not the second guess that gets us, it's the 552nd guess. And there are 10 million dead squirrels a year on the highway that attest to the dangers of soft talk. Okay. That's indecision materialized in front of our face. And so what are the soft talk keywords? I'll rattle these off and then we'll go over them again at the end for the soft talk challenge, which is all people need for them to go, holy shit, Mark and Rob, we're serious about this. Yeah, we are. We're serious and sincere. So guess, sort of, kind of, like, almost like, possibly, Probably, maybe, try, hopefully one day. It's roughly 10. It's a handful. And those words it's hard to make decisions, folks, when those words are in your language. And I guarantee you all, everyone listening to this podcast, they're in your language. And it makes making decisions hard. It creates indecision and anxiety. One of my favorite quotes about this from Maimonides, I mispronounce his name a lot. He's a 18th century somebody. I prefer the fear of making the wrong decision instead of the terror of indecision. Whew. Wow. I do too. I would too. Because our language, it tricks us into being innocent bystanders. Okay. It tricks us to being in the stands, being a spectator in our own life. The soft talk, oh, I'm just an indecisive person. Really? Or are you using a lot of soft talk? And she did that to me, and my mom was never this, and dad was a blah, 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 and he should have done this for, okay, well, now I've got reasons not to do shit. Okay. And I can't keep focusing on my past. There's my past again. Don't want to experience that again. So I'm going to stay at home. And that is a specific story, folks. That sentence, I can't keep focusing on my past. 2014, I'm giving a workshop up in Calgary for a sales team. And then I stayed after and did one-on-one sessions. And I was in a room with a young man who was struggling at work. And this highlights that sentence. And it also highlights the 4 aspects of our experience of ourselves that our language influences very quickly, simultaneously. This is what he said. Mark, I can't keep focusing on my past. He said that, and this is what he did. Mark, I can't keep focusing on my past. And this is audio, I'm assuming.
Gonna have both. YouTube is video and then audio for the rest.
Super cool. What for the audio, what I just did is I turned around and looked behind me. Like it wasn't a little nose scratch. It was a macro movement. His whole body turned around, looked behind him, looked back at me. Of course I saw it. I'm staring at him and I go, dude, you just turned around and looked behind you, right? He goes, what, really? And I go, yeah. What did you see? And he had to stop and think about it. This, again, because we use our language so quickly, generally speaking. I saw myself on the couch and all alone. There's 2 of the 4, folks. Our language, let's just go instantly, simultaneously. It influences our imagination. It's what the pictures and little mental movies that we make. I saw myself on the couch and all alone. Let's keep it simple, influences our posture, our physiology, our posture. He turned around, looked behind him, didn't even know he did it. Our feelings and emotions. I asked him, what are you feeling? And he was angry and a little bit scared. And then the 4th thing is our breathing. He was in a stress response. His breathing was trapped in his chest. Good luck changing your client's mind if your breath is trapped if their breath is trapped in their chest. Good luck changing your mind if your breath is trapped in your chest. It's called amygdala hijack. Look it up.
Mark, on that point too, it's something that it's breeding conflict, not just in your language, just in general when our breath is trapped in our chest. And I think of any 2 people arguing, they're not breathing deeply. They're up here. They're probably mouth breathing because they're probably talking, yapping at each other in their chest. And they're probably saying things that they aren't actually meaning in the moment because they're so in this sympathetically charged space. And that's something, for coming from the health coach perspective, I've always talked about breath as part of an essential piece of optimizing health with clients, with, sales team, with whoever I'm working with. But having this conversation with you and the work that you do, pairing the 2 together has now not only solidified that, yes, it's something I need, that it confirms that I was doing the right thing, but also confirms I need to do more of this. This is now the starting point. Before any time we get on a call with somebody, I'm saying, hey, we're just going to take 3 breaths. We're going to get ourselves present. That's how I start every call with my team. We're going to take 3 breaths, get ourselves grounded, get ourselves centered. And I notice if I forget to do that, one, I have somebody call me out. I have a few people say, hey, if I forget to do the breath thing, call me out for it. But if I don't, people are on their phones. They're not as present. The breath brings us present. The breath is our anchor in everything that we do. And a big thing I notice before I'm going to hop on a phone call, before I hop on a sales call, whatever, if I just take a little breath, my whole chemistry changes. Now I feel more grounded, more confident. Now I don't approach negation, acknowledge. Now, when I'm approaching a sales call, rather than saying, I think you might like this. Now there's going to be some more solid talk. This is the best product for the benefits you're looking for, as opposed to, I think you might like this product. There's a lot of changes in those little word choices there. There's a lot more receptivity on the other person's end as well.
1,000%. Those are two completely different universes. Are you familiar with Jeffrey Gitomer by chance?
No.
So he's one of the old school juggernauts in sales and personal training, personal development and sales training. And Adam was his right-hand man, Adam Chin, for 6 years, built his studio. Adam and I, and he's got a podcast called Sell or Die. We're going down to Charlotte next weekend, and we're doing his show together, Adam and I, live in his studio. So 1,000%, this is applicable to anyone in a sales conversation. If you could have the best thing ever to sell, and the person totally needs it and wants it, and if your breath is trapped in your chest, when you go to pitch, you're going to sound like an amateur. It's where amateurs deliver from. If you want to sound confident, and not only sound confident, exude that confidence, get your breath low and slow, keep it there. That right there, it'll do a number of things. One of them is it'll help you speak a little bit slower. And most people prefer their rate of speech a little bit slower once they become conscious of it than when they were unconscious of it. Me 20 years ago, I speak slower now than I did then, because it gives me that range. I can go up if I need to, I can come down if I need to. And I'm more efficient and economical with my language. Okay. Because I want to speak well. I was asked, why do you speak at the way it was on Friday. I did a podcast, and the guy was like, I noticed that you and some other people from the Enlifted community speak a little bit slower than most. And I said, I want to speak well. And that a little bit slower rate, it gives me the time to improve my time. It gives me the space to feel how my words are influencing me, and then I can make better choices. Simple.
And it's not like you're slowing down that much. It's a very subtle amount of slow, but it is tangible. And it's that small amount of space that can make or break essentially the sentence that we're crafting, because that's what, something that I can't believe we haven't said yet is the words of spells, the whole abracadabra piece that is not magic. So I'm going to dive into that in just a second here, but we are consciously crafting our sentences.
Yes.
So as we flip to the other side now, so we have negations. The flip side of that would be affirmations. We have soft talk. The flip side of that would be solid talk. We have projections. The flip side of that is reflections. And I want to just let you riff on that, those three, and abracadabra, and weave that all together in a beautiful tapestry.
Perfect. Rant away, Mark Schau. So the opposite of negations, you're going to get a very different response from yourself and other people by changing some of these patterns that are in your language. It's an educational issue. I was like I said, an elementary school sports teacher. I have a degree in education, and I was brought up in the public school. I didn't have any course classes or conversations on how my language influenced myself for better and for worse, how to use my language to stay focused on what's important and keep the drama low. Nothing. It was all spelling, grammar, and definitions, as in traditional spelling. So the opposite of negations is affirmations. That's where you talk about what you can do, what you want, what you are able to do. And what that does is it points you in the right direction. There's a reason that the windshield in a car is this big and the rear view mirror is this big. negations, a lot of time it points us straight back into the parts of and connects to the parts of our stories that are still bothering us. And so, I can start my own business. I will go to the gym 3 times this week. I am more confident than I was 5 years ago. I want to run that marathon. And so what it does is it just helps you focus on what you want more often. And, there's things called vision boards. I used to do a lot of presentations on some festival scenes, hippie shit. And I'd ask them, hey, raise your hand if you ever heard of a vision board. And a lot of them raise their hand. They say, yeah, I got one. I'm like, well, do you put what you don't want on there? And they're like, no, why would I do that? I'm like, yeah, exactly. It's a stupid question. But then again, it also isn't. What about your internal vision board? And they're like, oh. Then there's projections. The opposite of a projection. What happens when you walk in and look in a mirror? Who do you see? You. That's why it's called a reflection. Okay. I need you to listen to me versus I need me to listen to me. My father thinks I'm a failure. I think I'm a failure. She made me think we needed to get that extra car. Who wrote the check? No, I'm nuts. I made me think we needed to get an extra car. She doesn't respect my time. I don't respect my time. And what that does, that initial putting the ball back in your court, this what am I looking to say? These things can hurt. Okay. This is not a free lunch. This is a challenging practice. And what it does is it helps put you uncomfortable that it can and usually is, especially when it comes to the stuff that you're most emotionally charged about. It puts you back in the driver's seat. And from there, you can walk yourself in a better direction. Because when the statement and the story of she's always talking over me, when that sentence is left there, and that's the end of the story, then that is the end of the story. She doesn't respect me, that bitch. And then I see her out and about. What if that's my girlfriend? I'm secretly thinking these things to my girlfriend, and she walks in. I've been ruminating on it all day long, working up these stories. And then my reticular activating system comes into the conversation, and I go find other examples of other things. Maybe they aren't even related, but they're still under the umbrella of stuff that bothers me about her. And then she walks in the door, and I'm very short. And then she says something. She's like, what's wrong with you? And I just tear right into her. It's like, what the hell? You'll save a ton of time, folks. You know how much time I've spent, saved myself days, hours, days, weekends, weeks, months, catching a projection before it turns into something serious. Like, there's the breath. I mean, yeah, I do that. I do that a lot more than she does that. I interrupt myself more in my head than she does. And she only did it twice, two different parties. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's annoying, but I mean, I can learn to tell better stories and not waffle on a lot. I mean, and see, you get yourself back in your own story and well, make changes. And then there's solid talk.
Mark, before we dive into solid talk real quick,
yeah.
There was an exercise. I wish I could remember what book it was from, because it was a great exercise that was basically pick a person in your life that is causing stress in your life, bothering you, whatever. Write down all the qualities of the things that they do, the actions that they do that bother you. And then the part 2 was, how many of those do you do? The answer for me was every single freaking one of them. And I remember looking at that thing and just being like, because one of them was like, oh, the kitchen's always a mess. And then I was like, well, actually, I kind of leave the bathroom a mess. It wasn't the exact thing, but it was a very similar area. So I want to challenge everybody listening to this. Play that exercise. Pick a person in your life that you are projecting onto, and then take those same things and reflect them right back at you, because it's probably a mirror.
damn you, Rob Carney. That's what's going to happen. If you do that and you sit with the answers and wait, it very rarely does it. It usually happens relatively quickly. I mean, like 10 seconds. Look and sit, as opposed to immediately discounting them because you don't like the way it feels. It is extremely eye-opening. Yes, that's a very damn you, Rob Carney. That's a very real exercise. And most everything on the list, you're doing it. You're doing something similar, or you've done it in the past. Sorry, not sorry. Then there's soft talk or solid talk. All you do is pluck out soft talk, pluck out the soft talk keywords, and it's the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do in your texts and your emails, because you've got that lag time where you can look at the words that you're writing and go, oh, wait a minute, there's a guess and there's a might. Yeah, I might want to do that next weekend. And somebody's like, well, what Mark, what if you don't know yet? What if you need some extra time? I get it. There's a time and a place for soft talk, and 19 out of 20 times, you're going to want to take that thing out of there. Okay. You're going to want to take that thing out of there. And so you'll see it in your emails and your texts, and then you'll absolutely notice it in your language from time to time. You'll notice it in other people's language. You'll walk down the street and you'll be able to pick up this guy's sentence. I just don't want to have any problems. I just don't want to cause any problems. And you and your buddy who are in on this game, because it's a game, are like, did you catch that? Yeah, I caught that. That dude's evening is screwed, and not in a good way. And then you're in the game. You've got a game to play. Like I said, you can practice thinking differently. You can practice speaking differently. You can practice and negation acknowledged. And what we do that time to time in the Enlifted community, and it's to demonstrate our awareness of what we're saying, because sometimes it's easier or more fun to say a negation. The hell was I going to say? Negation acknowledged. It doesn't matter. We're on track. What else? Where we go next? Oh, abracadabra. We talk about the reticular activating system too.
Yep.
Happy to do that. So 2013, I'm living in Ecuador, and I go out to dinner with some friends. There's a guy at the table. He knows I'm in the language game. And he goes, hey, Mark, you know what abracadabra means? And mid fork, I'm like, yeah, magic. He goes, no. Abracadabra is Aramaic, and it translates to with my word I create, or with my word I influence. Hairs on the arm, back of the neck. I put my fork down. I went over there. I said, tell me everything you know about this. Are you serious? He goes, yeah, you can look it up. The metaphysicians, the teachers of the day, would triangulate abracadabra and wear it around their neck to remind them of the power and the mechanism of the spoken word, power of language, and to dispel negative energy, which means to cast out. Spells, dispel. So we got abracadabra, and it's an Aramaic. It's an ancient language. It was the language the original Old Testament was written in. It's a language, one of the two languages Jesus spoke. It's old school. It's still spoken in some parts of Persia today. And then we have spells. So this is Webster's definition of a spell, not mine. Definition of a spell. A spell is a word or a combination of words of great influence. That's it. A word or a combination of words of great influence. Rob, have you combined some words today?
Probably a few.
Mark, have you combined some words today? Yes. Everybody listening, have you combined some words? Yes, you're spelling. And there are two kinds of spells. There are constrictive spells and there are expansive spells. Here's a tale of two stories. So now I'm going to do the reticular activating system first. My car got stolen back in the day, and I called up my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, somebody jacked my SUV. How weird is that? I've got stuff to do. I need the farm truck." I was in Richmond when it happened. So I go out to the farm and I get Brown and Browner, which is one of my dad's prized possessions. The 1985 Ford F-150 that he bought brand new off the showroom floor. It's still in mint condition, out under a canopy at the farm. So I get Brown and Browner, drive Brown and Browner into Richmond. And within a matter of 24 hours, I started seeing 1985-ish Ford F-150s. There's a lot of them in Richmond. I had no idea. Most people have had this experience before. They get a new car or they see a car commercial and they start. Has that happened to you? You start seeing more car. What car was it, Rob?
Well, I remember my mom got a Honda Pilot when she got one, and I started seeing them everywhere.
It's crazy. So that's the reticular activating system, folks. So it has a search and edit mission once, and it's impartial. It doesn't care. Okay. It's neutral. And once something gets programmed, once it gets programmed with something, as in we're looking at it a lot, or we emotionalize over it, or both, goes on a search and edit mission, as in it goes looking for more of the same. It's called confirmation bias. It goes looking for more of the same. And so while it's finding more F-150s or red Volkswagens, what was the car that your mom got?
Honda Pilot.
A Honda Pilot. Then, so it's looking for more Honda Pilots. And while it's looking for more Honda Pilots, it's also editing anything out that isn't that. So it's no blue vans or Corvettes, because it's not the thing. Okay. This is also known as selective attention. Look up the invisible gorilla. Look up in the invisible gorilla. That's a great
video. That's a really good video.
Dude, it's a fantastic video. The original video of this study it's famous. They wrote a book about it. 1 minute a video of, they took 7 college kids dressed 3 in white, 3 in black, and 1 in a gorilla costume. They gave the white team 2 basketballs, the black team 2 basketballs, and they could only pass the basketballs back and forth to their teammates. They film it for 1 minute. 30 seconds in, this student walks into the middle of the frame, turns, looks at the camera in the gorilla costume, beats his chest, and walks out. That's the minute video. And then they show this video to tens of thousands of people and give them one thing to do. So they direct their attention. Magicians know this. People that script the news know this. Count how many times the white team passes the basketball back and forth to the white team. Spoiler alert, correct answer is 15. And then they asked them, well, how many times? Then they give the answer that they give. And then they ask them, hey, did you happen to see the gorilla? 50% of the population edited out completely because they're negation, acknowledge, not looking for it. It's not the thing they're focusing on. They're looking somewhere else. So since they're looking over here and that's what they should be paying attention to, it doesn't appear. And so the question is, reticular activating system. Does the reticular activating system only work for vehicles and students in gorilla costumes? Or is our language influencing how we see ourselves, forcing us to see ourselves in certain ways based on our language, and editing out or impeding on us seeing ourselves differently based on our language? Here's a tale of 2 stories. Remember spells? There are constrictive spells and there are expansive spells. This woman comes in, sits down. She was very forthcoming. And she said, I'm having problems in my marriage. My husband thinks I'm attractive. I refuse to believe him. I know where it's coming from. I just don't know what to do about it. Wonderful. Tell me more. So she's 10 years old, walks into her grandparents' house for Christmas, and her great aunt is right there at the door and leans down and goes, "My, you have a big nose, just like me." Thanks. Little girl, stress response, runs into the bathroom. Rob, what do you think the first thing she looked at when she got in the bathroom was?
Her nose.
Her nose, which was no bigger now physically than it was 5 seconds ago, but in her imagination, she's got a honker, which means she's ugly. Oh, okay. And yeah, of course, she's going to strongly emotionalize over that. Oh, right. So since you're ugly, great. Okay, reticular activating systems comes online, says, great, I'm going to locate and emphasize all the other flaws, and I'm going to edit out anything that would be counter to that. Compliments, quality features, anything. And she grows up with this, and you can see it, or you can imagine it. Her husband's like, damn, baby, you look good. She's like, you don't really mean that. You think that's going to cause some problems? It's going to cause some problems. So that is a constrictive, a combination of words of great influence. You have a big nose just like me. It's like 10 words. Okay. And really did a number on her. And then there's the expansive spells. Okay. Also 2014, doing a workshop at Gratifly, South Carolina hippie festival. Great. That's enough info. I give the workshop. There's a dude setting up a booth right next to me. He comes up afterwards and says, man, that was awesome. I liked all of it. You want to hear a great story? I'm like, yeah, dude, of course I want to hear. Who says no to great stories? And he goes, my grandfather took me out in the backyard when I was 13 years old. And we'll just call him Davey. He goes, little Davey, life's wild. There are ups and downs and twists and turns and zigs and zags, and you're going to get some things right and you're going to get some things wrong. Just always remember to err on the side of being a badass motherfucker. And he said, grandpa dropped an F-bomb on him in the right context. He said, my life changed in an instant. He said, I looked up, things are looking up. I saw myself as capable and confident, and I felt that way too. And I took this breath of fresh air in, and I just felt bigger. And he goes, man, I've made a lot of mistakes. I still do. And I also get things right. And I go after what I want. He goes, and I like being me. And in the words of the great Adam Chin, if you like being you, then you're winning. And so that abracadabra is real, folks. Our language is influencing our imagination, our feelings and emotions, our physiology, and our breathing. It's doing it all day, every day. We're spelling all day, every day. And when someone is able to orchestrate their language, again, to stay focused on the things that are important to them and keep the drama down, and they're able to do that. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. So is everything. Over a prolonged period of time, and they keep talking themselves into doing cool shit, and they're having fun, and they're laughing more, and they're breathing better, and they're smiling more, because those things all go hand in hand. And they're living a better life than most people. It looks like magic, but not the magic most people think. The definition of magic is the ability to apparently alter the course of events using supernatural forces. It's not the ability to do it, it's the apparent ability to do it. And when one person's got control over their language and their stories, and another person has 0 to none, the person A is going to look magical to them. How do you do it?
Well, Mark, this is something that this is something that is very apparent in the sense that we think tens of thousands of thoughts per day. And I think it's something around the realm of 90% of them are the same thoughts as the day before, and 85% of them, roughly, again, these are rough numbers, are negative. So we are essentially reinforcing these same negative thoughts. This is the average person, not saying everybody, but the average person is reinforcing negative, repetitive thoughts. Hence coming back to the definition of the victimhood mentality, the repetitive, almost addictive quality of these same patterns with or without evidence. So the perception of magic, the perception of abracadabra may seem as if it is happening magically, when in fact, it's because there's no physical evidence if it's happening in our own head, or the words that we write, not as tangible as, we think of the overnight success. I don't think there's anything as an overnight success. It's all those compounding thoughts, those compounding words, compounding choices. And so when someone has this abracadabra mentality, we'll call it, we're using our words, our thoughts creatively, switching maybe that 90% negative. Even if we got that down to 45% negative, we just chopped half of our negative thoughts in half and now implanted half of those with positive thoughts. That's not just a 45% difference. That's like 100% difference.
It's huge.
And I know Dave Robinson was talking about health math is an interesting game. It's not like adding +1 exercise -1 alcohol equals 0. It's like, it's a bigger difference. So with that being said, there are so many different layers that we can dive into with this. And this is, like you said, the easiest part to start is with the soft talk, because many of us are doing it. Just about all of us are doing it. We can start there. That's the gateway. We chop off some negations. We eliminate projections as best we can. We start focusing on affirmations, solid talk, and reflections. And I know that you have a fantastic podcast with Kim called Get Enlifted, which has some great little mini episodes. I think it's about 12 or so episodes. So I want to encourage people to dive into those if you want to go deeper into each of those, or check out some of the courses Mark has. Check out the level 1 Enlifted certification, something I plan to do in the future. I've had a lot of friends who have gone through that. I've had nothing but phenomenal reviews of it. A lot of great testimonials. You've got a great website, enlifted.me. You have a great team of support. And while you've been doing this for almost 2 decades, you're really just getting started. I can feel that the momentum, the tide is shifting, and people are really ready and receptive to this in the phase of humanity that we're in. And I feel that we are now, the tide's changing, and it's either time to get on the wave, ride the wave, or you're going to get sucked under with the tidal wave. So I know we could go on for probably about 6 more hours on this topic, but Mark, I appreciate the work that you're doing. This is something that we all need, and I have not found anyone else doing anything really remotely similar to the work that you're doing, which is what is so remarkable, is that it's very unique. It really stands out, and very quickly people can get tangible results. Shifting one sentence can absolutely transform, like you're saying with that gal who was cheated on. She changed the story, and all of a sudden everything has changed. Her whole perspective, her identity, her relationship with this person, her thoughts about this person have completely transformed. So I want to first off thank you for the work that you're doing, and second of all, give you an opportunity to give any closing thoughts, any way that people can get in contact with you and stay in touch with the Enlifted community.
Thank you for all that feedback, Rob. The Boston crew is very near and dear to my heart. Y'all are just a bunch of good people up there, putting in the work, putting in the reps. We have, if anyone wants to do a breathwork session with us, we're known as the language people. We might as well be known as the language and the breathing people. And gun to head, it's about the breath. We have a breathwork coach, a level 3 Wim Hof instructor, Brandon Powell, and you can sign up for the free breathwork class through our website and enlifted.me, and anyone interested in the certification can learn a lot more about it on that website. We're on Instagram at Enlifted Coaches. Thanks for having me on, buddy. Thanks for being a great host and asking questions and letting me go off on, they're now infamous Mark England rants and tangents. I get worked up about this stuff, man, because I know what it's done for me, and I know what happens when people change a few words. They have an experiences and they feel it, and then they want more, because people want to feel good. People want to feel good and feel competent and confident, and they want to be a part of something. And this is absolutely a something, dude. It's very much gaining momentum. You're 15 years in the game. We're an overnight success. And it changes permanently the conversation about mindset, the words. Include the words. It's where the rubber meets the road, and watch what happens.
I love it. Yeah, and as we did that workshop at ICNI that you let us through, I ended up doing that with one of my clients I was coaching.
Wonderful.
And you talked about those little, those, I forget what you call it, like the sounds of transformation.
Cognitive shift.
Cognitive shift. Remember the oof, the wow, it's those little those little things. And yeah, so it's powerful stuff. And it was just changing these small little tweaks. Started off with this giant sentence, chopped it down, narrowed it down, got to the essence of it. Boom, that's what we're working with. So it's not easy, but it is simple. It really is simple. It's taking out little words, adding things there, but it's not easy. Like I said, when we get those emotions involved, things can be a little bit more difficult. So, well, Brother Mark, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate the work you're doing. I will put all the links to those listening in the description box as well. I appreciate you tuning in here. If you like this podcast, share it. You know, this is the type of work that we need to get to the mass consciousness. Because if you look at the news right now, there's a lot of negations, there's a lot of projection, there's a lot of soft talk, there's a lot of avoidance, a lot of victimhood mentality. So we need a shift in our language as a society, not just talking about like the United States or the East Coast, as a human species. We need a shift in our language. And this can be a place to start. So appreciate you all listening. Mark, appreciate you, man. Everybody listening. We'll talk to you soon. This podcast is brought to you by Purium Health Products. They are my favorite organic, non-GMO superfoods company. And I've been partnering with them for over 3 years now. And since they made the initiative back in 2019, deciding that they will go plastic-free, they have saved 156,000 pounds of plastic in just under 3 years, which is crazy. Think of how much that is saving going to our landfills. So not only are they saving the planet, they got my favorite organic superfoods. So you can go to iShopPurium.com, check out your favorites, use the discount code WHOLEHEALTH, and that will save you $50 off your order of $75 or more, or 25% off your order of $200 or more. So whatever saves you more, you're going to get the best savings available. And when you sign up for what's called a monthly smart order, you'll save the 25% locked in, and you get double rewards points towards discounts and free products. They have a whole host of performance products, recovery products, the Ultimate Lifestyle Transformation, which is a fantastic detoxification program. They have some new protein powders as well. They have the matcha, they have the coffee, they have the chai protein, and then they have the old school MVP Sport chocolate and vanilla. So check out iShopPurium.com. Use the discount code WHOLEHEALTH. That helps you support your health, helps me support the podcast, and helps a company that has the environmental stewardship as one of their main pillars. So appreciate you listening to this podcast. Appreciate the support. Have a beautiful day, and we will talk with you soon.